Well, I want to say good morning to everybody and welcome to our New Year Hour of Power. We're really changing it to Power Sessions, BBC Power Sessions. Just a little update on the name of this thing we're going to be doing. I'm glad to say that we're going to be doing these every month. At least that's the intention right now, the first Wednesday of every month. And everybody is here is welcome to come to them. I want to thank, first of all, Lisa at the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce. They've been a sponsor for many years of our Hour of Powers. The Ashland Alliance have been a very strong supporter as well. Ohio University Southern came on board about 3 years ago, and our newest supporter is the Maysville Chamber of Commerce. And again, I've been doing this for about 17, 18 years and really just love to give back to the community, and this is my way to give back. So this morning we're going to be talking about leading effective meetings. I think meetings is another one of those subjects where most people really don't get a smile on their face. They are not that excited about meetings, and if that's possible to change, I want to work on that today. So if you especially are someone who's responsible for meetings, you set meetings up, you chair the meeting, I think this is going to be some great practical reminders. I imagine most of these things will not be new to most of you, but there'll be some good reminders. So get some notes out and take some notes. If you get one or two good nuggets or tips out of this, I think it'll be worth you coming this morning. My name is Dave Beam. I've been married for 36 years, a wonderful wife. She just takes care of everything in my life so that I can do this. I am the granddaddy of all granddaddies. That's a self-proclaimed title. Having a lot of fun with that recently, and I won't bore you with those stories, but you know how grandparents can be. My home is here in Wheelersburg, Ohio. Been here for about 36 years. I'm a business life coach. I've been doing that work for 17 years. I enjoy playing my keyboard. That's my escape. I go down to a nice finished basement where I have a wonderful keyboard and play around there. I'm a certified biblical counselor. I'd like to announce that our training this year, we do training in the winter, is starting this coming Monday. If you have more questions about that, feel free to email or call me. And all of this last one ties all of this together. I have a passion to help people, and I get the great joy and privilege of doing that. And this is one way that I get to do that. Just to give you a little bit of a picture of what else I do in the business and some other opportunities for you. I have some upcoming free events, these events specifically every month, the first Wednesday of every month. Those are actually posted 6 months in advance now on the website, so you can go register for all of those now if you want to and see what the titles are. The past events that we did last year are now available on YouTube, and those links are on my website, so that is all free of charge as well. We have a library of articles on the website, up to almost 100 articles on my website that I've written. Those are available to you. Every week I write a new article and I send that out by a weekly email. That's also available to you. Then the first paid thing I do here is mastermind groups, a group of about 8 people that meet weekly, that we just talk about life, we talk about business, we talk about leadership, we talk about challenges and opportunities. It's a wonderful time. If you're interested in that, you can contact me as well. I do executive mentoring and coaching, leadership management training for organizations and small businesses. Be glad to talk to anyone that has an interest in that. So for more information, that's the website, that's the email, and that's my phone number. And if you just drop me an email, I'll send you this PowerPoint, which has this information in it, obviously. So that's the introduction. Now let's jump into why you showed up today. You want to find out how to do a better job with meetings. Let's do the rules of the game. We typically start off our hour of powers or our power sessions with this. There's some agreements that if you'll make with me today in your own head and in your own thinking, that you'll get a whole lot more out of today. And the first one is you're going to agree to embrace an ownership mindset. Let's talk about what that means to own it. Frankly, if you're responsible for meetings at your organization and they're not going well, you need to own that. You can make excuses about it. You can talk about the people that attend and how they don't participate and do their part. You can talk about how it's hard to get people to open up. You can talk about how you have to have this meeting and have to do this. I say you really don't have to do anything. You choose to do or you don't choose to do. At least that's what an owner does. A victim says, I'm bound. I just have to keep doing it the same way. There's not that much I can do. An owner says, no, life is too short. Business is too important. Our mission is too critical. I'm going to step back and say, how can I own this and make it better? What can I do, first of all, to be better myself? That's an ownership mindset. So if you'll come into this morning with that mindset, you're going to get a whole lot more out of this. It's because you've set your brain to look for answers. You've set your mind to learn something that you can do better. Secondly, a participation of 100%. I always ask for that agreement and that rule to be in place and accepted by the people that I work with. What that means is I'm just going to show up and I'm going to be engaged and I'm going to be present. I'm not going to just be kind of halfway there. I'm going to fully own things as an owner and I'm going to participate 100%. And then this one, I'm going to be more like a little child that doesn't know much. I don't need to impress anybody with what I know. I can just be curious and I can really say, I really don't know. I may know a lot, but based on what there is to be known about meetings, I don't know much. So if I come in thinking I already know all about this, I'm going to close my mind down and my thinking down. If I come into this saying, I don't know, I'm just interested. I'm just going to have some fun today and be curious. You'll get a whole lot more out of it. And we talk about fun. If you're smiling and you're happy and you're feeling good, you're obviously going to do better. So I would say those are good rules of the game for a good meeting too. People show up and participate, own it, get rid of their I know, come curious and interested to learn something and have some fun. So those are our rules. If you'll take a moment, just think through those and commit to them in your mind, then you're going to be ready to go this morning and get a whole lot out of this. Here's the challenge that we're addressing this morning. I think you want to, I want to help you learn how to organize and conduct meetings that are productive, engaging, efficient, and most importantly, as a coach, get results. What results, you might say? Well, that's the first issue you need to address. Why are we having the meeting? What result are we trying to achieve? I'm going to give you some practical organizational tips. I'm going to give you some ideas on how you might change the meeting or you might conduct it a little bit differently for the purpose of making it more effective. Most people don't like meetings. They think they really slow things down. And I would agree that many meetings are a waste of time. One thing I would suggest you do before you have a meeting is really add up what you're paying each of those people in the organization. You could calculate it out to hourly rates and say, I'm going to have a 2-hour meeting. 2 times all those dollars is what you're paying to have those people there. I think it's something you need to consider before you just run out and schedule a meeting. I think effective meetings are awesome. I think they're amazing. I think you have to absolutely have them in your organization. But ineffective meetings and wastes of times and things that are just boring as the hill and we're not really solving any problems, getting anything done, that's what we're trying to eliminate today, or at least improve and change. And so change is the word. So let's talk about understanding change. This is a formula. It's not algebra. D times V plus FS needs to be greater than R. That means nothing to you right now unless you've seen it before. So let's break this down. If you look at the first thing here, I want to look at the R right here. The resistance to change. It's human. It's built into us. It's called homeostasis. We like things as they are. That's just our nature. That's people's nature. Be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. Why do people like home? Because it's familiar. They're not in an unchanging environment. Lord knows we've had an interesting year of change. We've just come off of a year of change. I have a sense we're going to have another year of change. People are not good with change typically. They resist it. So you come to a meeting like this to learn how to do meetings differently. And if you're really going to get anything out of this, you're going to walk out of here and do something differently, which means there's going to be a change. There will be a resistance in you to changing, and there'll be a resistance in your people for changing. That's just normal. That's just typical. So we have to find a way to overcome that resistance. That's what this formula is about. You, first of all, to change, you need to be dissatisfied with where you are. You need to help grow the dissatisfaction in your people if you want change. How do you create more dissatisfaction? That's a great question. Great questions create more dissatisfaction. Having people slow down and really consider what's happening can create some dissatisfaction. Sometimes we're all moving too fast and too busy to notice what's not as it ought to be. It's good to be dissatisfied. Now, it's not good to create a lot of dissatisfaction and stop there. But to overcome a resistance to change, and if you have decided as a leader that something needs to change, then some dissatisfaction needs to be created for people, or they're not going to move away from their comfort. That's just human nature. But we need more than just dissatisfaction. We also need to have some vision and some first steps. Vision. That's about where we're going. That's about what's better. People have to be dissatisfied with where they are, and they have to have a vision of where they'd like to go. A leader's job, a leader's calling, is to help people be a bit disturbed and dissatisfied with the status quo, but also once they have that stirring, have a better place to go called vision. Today, we're talking about meetings. Let's talk about your meetings. Where are you dissatisfied with your meetings? If you've got a paper and pencil or a paper and a pen there, just jot down some things right now that in our current meetings, this is what I'm dissatisfied with. You need to focus on that and stir that dissatisfaction. You'll never change. And then think about, here's what I would like our meetings to be like. If you're not promoting and sharing and inspiring a good vision of what you want things to be like as a leader, you can get people dissatisfied with where they are and talk about the problem. But you also need to have some vision of where we're going. So both of those things need to happen. And then once we get clarity, dissatisfaction, and vision, add some first steps. And that'll break that momentum. That'll break that inertia. And now we're moving forward against the resistance to change. It's a wonderful formula. It's a wonderful concept when we're talking about change. And specifically this morning, we're talking about changing your meetings. And I always throw in something like this because if we don't take action and change something, then we're just getting some more information, which maybe has a little bit of value, but not much. If you've got a tool and you never use it, it's really just an overhead. It just sits in the toolbox. I want you to take action. I think when we pick up things and learn things and put them into action, that's when they become valuable. So we're going to talk about some tools of communication. This is common sense. I'm going to talk about some things that I may have an opinion on some of this that you may disagree. That's fine. It's my perspective after working with people for many years. I'm not the absolute authority and there's no right or wrong here. These are suggestions or ideas. The important thing for you to get out of this slide and this concept is to actually think about your communication tools. The first one is texting. Texting has taken over. I don't know how you feel. I know how I feel when I pick my phone up and I've got a text that runs off the phone page. I think it's overused, frankly. I think texting is good to direct people, give people immediate information. If I'm going to be late for a meeting, I'm supposed to be there, I can text you and let you know. I think it's a good way to make that contact without having to interrupt somebody with a phone call. But what texting lacks is just like what email lacks. There's no body language. There's no nonverbal communication, and you can get into a lot of trouble with texting. People are not the best writers. All of us are not really journalists. We don't always express ourselves in words, especially in the written word, well. So texting can often be misunderstood. So it has its limitations. I think it's a great technology for immediate communication and for giving some immediate instructions or status of things. Email is a bit better because we can flesh things out and take a little more time typically before we hit that send. We're maybe looking at that more like letters and memos that people used to write and send. Now we're doing that electronically. It's got its advantages, but I wonder how many of you would talk about your email inbox and groan because it's so full. And again, send me an email of 3 or 4 paragraphs. It's likely it won't get read because most of us don't want to sit and read long-winded emails. So if you're sending them, I'm warning you right now, your communication is not effective. That's not the best tool. If you've got something where you've got that much to say and that much to communicate, I'd recommend something else. A newsletter and a memo. Let's talk about that. You have some standard information you want to get out to your team. I wouldn't email that necessarily. I certainly wouldn't text it. I would send a specific, now this could be an email, but I would send a specific newsletter or memo out that you send out on a regular basis. So minimize the email, get organized, get really clear, get some clarity, and send out that regular overall organizational information together and minimize the frequency of that. Most people's inboxes are so full. If you can reduce that communication, that is so helpful, and that's a way to do it. Do a newsletter that's a regular monthly or weekly communication versus sending things out every day to people. Phone call is still good. I don't know many people who really like voicemail, and it seems that phone calls are becoming less and less. But sometimes, here's my rule of thumb. If I'm texting or emailing and I've gotten 3 back and forth exchanges and we're not getting something done, I pick up the phone and I call. At some point, the inefficiency of going back and forth with folks, it's easier just to say, why don't we pick up the phone and just have a talk? Sometimes you can get things resolved so much quicker. And I think there's nothing that can beat a one-to-one, face-to-face meeting. Even a meeting by Zoom where you're seeing someone is certainly superior to a phone call. I think it's better than an email and better than a text, especially for emotional issues, difficult issues, issues that could be misunderstood, issues that affect people in the way they feel about things, things that are important that we get it right. I think there's nothing that beats a face-to-face meeting. I know time is important and efficiency is important, but I get it right or do it over. I heard somebody say that once. And I think sometimes a face-to-face meeting is great. Now, as a coach and a leader, you need to make those meetings efficient and you need to have clarity around them. And unless it's really for the purpose of just some socialization and some connection, we need to get better at being more efficient in our face-to-face meetings. But certainly, I think that's the best way to communicate. You get the whole nonverbal as well as verbal communication in that. And then a team meeting. You need to have the right, we're going to look at some best practices for team meetings. That's where we're headed. the right people need to be there, and the right time needs to be allocated, and the right agenda needs to be there. Otherwise, team meetings can become a huge waste of time and even a frustration. And people, if you hear about your team meeting that you're scheduled to go to, are you smiling or frowning? If you're frowning, that's why we're here this morning. I want to turn those frowns into smiles. So, and then a company meeting is where I want to get almost everyone in the organization together at least once a year or once a quarter to really look at the vision and celebrate together. And we're not going to talk a whole lot about that kind of meeting today. We're going to go back and talk about these team meetings. And this specifically are some best practices for meetings. This would apply to group meetings and to face-to-face meetings. And I want you to I want to slow this one down now and just look at each of these best practices very, very closely. Probably the most important one on the list here. Why are you meeting? If you don't know why you're meeting clearly, where you can write it down as succinctly in a sentence or two at the most, I would ditch the meeting. If you don't have a good reason to have a meeting, you need to get rid of the meeting. All you're doing is pulling people out of activity and out of other things into a room to waste time. Now, your meeting may be just to get together and catch up with each other. That's okay, as long as you have that written down and that's your objective and you get that done. But frankly, I talk to organizations all the time that sometimes they're doing meetings because that's what we've always done. We've always had a Monday morning meeting. Well, what are you getting done in that meeting? What's the objective? Not really sure, just kind of catching up, kind of getting a rehearsal of what everybody's done that week. I said, send it out in an email, send it out in a weekly communication that you're not taking people's time. Invite only the appropriate people. Again, if you're an organizational leader and you have management responsibilities, before you call a meeting, you need to really see what that meeting is costing in terms of salary. I've got my main team and staff tied up for 3 hours. That could be hundreds of dollars an hour just in what I'm paying people to be at that meeting. Make sure that it's important for them to be there. Plus, I'm telling you this, folks, I hear it all the time. People are frustrated when they're required to be in meetings where they don't even know why they're there. In fact, they'd rather not be there. Those are not appropriate people. We got people that don't want to be there. They're not participating. They're not bringing contribution. And there's not, just to be there because it's required does not make sense. This is where we need to own it. This is where you need to be that owner and step back and really take an objective look at what are we doing here with our meetings. I think most meetings probably could be smaller and be better. Every time you add a person to a meeting, you're going to lower the communication efficiency just because you have another person to consider. So invite the appropriate people with a clear written objective. Any information that people need to have for that meeting, send it in advance. We don't need to be sitting in a room together reading things and reviewing things that could have been done in advance. That's just being proactive and being a good team leader and a good meeting leader. Get the information to folks a day or two ahead of time so that they can review that and be prepared. This needs to go without saying, but it absolutely happens so rarely. You begin and you end on time. If you have an 8:30 meeting, you need to be in the room at 8:25. That's again my opinion. That's how I would suggest you implement this best practice. And if you're going to be over at 9 o'clock, it's not 9:10. People should be able to set their schedule and their timing by your commitment as the leader of that meeting. If you say we're done at 9 o'clock, we're done at 9 o'clock. Today at 9:30, we will be finished. I can guarantee you that. I've made a commitment to start on time and end on time. It's a matter of integrity. It's a matter of professionalism. There's no reason not to do it. And if you have some issues with people and you don't know exactly how to fix that, give me a call, give me an email. I'd love to talk to you about it. A written agenda. A written agenda needs to be followed. And I think in most cases shared. Sometimes you may not want to share an agenda just to kind of keep the meeting a little on edge and a little exciting. But most of the time, a written agenda that is followed is what will keep you beginning and ending on time. We're going to share an agenda with you here in a little bit about a weekly meeting that comes out of a system called the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. It comes out in the book Traction. And I'm going to share a weekly meeting agenda with you that may transform your organization. That's coming up. You need, as the leader, to require full presence and participation. If a person cannot fully participate and fully be present, what do I mean by be fully present? Listening, engaged, no cell phones, no calls. You get a call, you put $15 in a jar. I'm kidding, but maybe not. Maybe if everybody had to spend $20 for every minute they were late to a meeting, we would see less of it. And maybe if every time their phone rang and they were interrupted, they had to put another $20 in the jar, we'd have a really interesting jar full of money for a while, but I think we'd start to get some accountability. Now, I'm being silly and fun, but it's that important that people be fully engaged, fully listening, and fully sharing and participating. If that's not happening in your team, we need to do some teamwork. We need to do some team building. We need to work on some team dysfunction, perhaps, because if you're gathering these people together, it's costing you money and time. It needs to be effective. And to get that, you need full presence and full participation. What do we need to walk out of a meeting with? This is another neglect of all of us. And again, these best practices are here to get you to think and challenge you with your meetings. Clear agreements, that specific agreements, accountabilities, next action steps, and scheduled follow-ups. In other words, if I've got 5 people in the meeting, each person in that meeting needs to know what they're going to do by when. What are they committing to? What is the action that each person is going to take out of this meeting because of the meeting? You're saying, Dave, we just have informational meetings. Well, I would send out a weekly email or a newsletter or another way of communication for that. If you're just sharing information, there's a more efficient way to do that. If you're just socializing, fine, then all this doesn't really apply to that kind of meeting. I'm talking about meetings where we're trying to get something done. And when you get something done, there's action that needs to happen and a follow-up that needs to happen. And everybody in that meeting needs to know clearly what responsibility they're leaving with if they didn't come in with, and maybe what they have to pass on to other team members when they leave. And as the facilitator and the leader of that meeting, that's your job, to construct a meeting and to arrange and organize a meeting in a way that happens. Again, needs to be an agenda item. If you have a clear agenda with that on it, that's how that best practice happens. Okay, I'm going to transition here a little bit and talk about effective meetings in your organization. I suggest with the people that I coach that they establish a meeting pulse. That idea of meeting pulse comes from this Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. The book is Traction. You can buy it on Amazon. I highly recommend it. I've also got a 10-page summary that I'll be glad to email you on that system. It gives you an overview of it. But an essential piece of this operating system is a meeting pulse. What do we mean by a pulse? Well, if you think about a physical pulse, when our heart beats, it's a regular thump, 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 thump. So this is a regular meetings that occur in your organization. This is being proactive in planning your meetings, not just doing impromptu meetings and just throwing them together. So the first one in this system is an annual meeting. I'm getting ready to have one of these with an organization next week. They like to do theirs in January every year. It's a big picture meeting in this system. We look at the vision, the big picture 3-year and 10-year vision of the organization. As a leader, people need to have a sense of where they're going. They need, where are we going to? What are we all about? You can also talk about mission in this meeting. What are we about? What are we doing? And where are we going? And then what are some goals for this next year? Some specific measurable things that we're going to work at achieving. And what are we celebrating from the past? And what are we celebrating about who we are? And how are we reminding ourselves of our values? So this is a party meeting, really. This is a very fun meeting, and it's an exciting meeting, and it's a meeting to get people re-energized and re-engaged with the organization and what's going on. An annual meeting. So one of those pulses that beats every year is this annual meeting. I suggest a full day at a minimum, maybe an off-site 2-day, depending on who's going to be there. Then a quarterly review and setting of milestones. This meeting is much like the annual meeting, only it's a smaller version. And it's really chunking down that annual goal into specific, what Gino calls rocks. If you watched the Stephen Covey, read the Stephen Covey book about the big rocks, the priorities for that quarter. The fact is, every one of your key folks, if they had 1 or 2 priorities, proactive priorities that they got done every quarter that moved towards those annual goals, we'd have an amazing organization. That takes a meeting to sit down and clarify those and get an accountability for them, and to get some help with them, and to work through the problems and the issues that are going to keep them from happening. Because those most important things usually get choked out by the urgency of the organization. So that quarterly meeting is a quarterly refocus for that next 13 weeks. How are we going to work toward those annual goals? And how are we doing with those annual goals? In this entrepreneurial operating system, we've got this weekly meeting called the Level 10 meeting, and I'll explain what that is here in a minute. But basically, in this system, this is the pulse. This is the key. This meeting is the game changer. If you did anything out of this slide, it would be this meeting. A weekly accountability and a solving of problems. Isn't that amazing? The #1 goal of a weekly Level 10 meeting is to solve problems, not to yammer and not to complain and not to talk and not to just rehearse and listen to everybody's what they did this week and what they didn't do. It's actually to get problems solved. Gino Wickman in his system says a 90-minute meeting is appropriate. And most of that 90 minutes, probably 2/3 to 3/4 of it, ought to be on solving problems. And I'm going to give you that agenda here in a moment for that weekly meeting. It could be a game changer for your organization. Then a standing huddle with smaller teams. This wouldn't be the whole organization, but individual smaller groups. A daily logistics and celebration meeting. What happened yesterday? What's going on today? This is tactical. It's just a catch up. What are we facing today? It's a little different. What do we got on the radar today? It's a quick meeting. It's a stand-up meeting. It's 5 or 10 minutes. And it's a way to get the day started and to get a little bit of rehearsal from yesterday and see where we are and what are the emergencies and the things we have to deal with today. I strongly suggest if you have departments in your organization or groups of people that you have a daily logistic huddle. If you have a small business or a small organization, it could be the whole organization gets together at a certain time in the day, beginning of the day, just to have that huddle and get started and celebrate what happened yesterday, and then what are we going to work on today. And then meeting one-to-one for coaching and development. This is the mentoring and the coaching piece where you as a leader meet with your direct reports, and the middle supervisors and managers meet with their direct reports for coaching and development. And that is a very integral part of a good meeting pulse, is those one-to-one meetings. And we're not going to talk as much about that today. I talk about that all the time with folks, but today we're going to focus more on this weekly group meeting that we have. So let's talk about the Level 10 agenda. The heart of the meeting pulse, the weekly Level 10 meeting. And here's the agenda. I'm going to take a breath here and let you listen to this one. This is a very interesting transformational thing. In this meeting, your key team gets together and they start with a segue. Gino says this is to get our heads together. We're all coming from these busy places and we need to just take a breath and get together. So everybody will go around the table and just take a minute. This is a sentence or two, and share some personal best and some business best from the last week. Something good that happened last week personally, and something great that happened in the business last week if you have something. Everybody has a chance to speak, and it takes just a few minutes. We're not taking an inordinate amount of time, but it brings us together into the meeting. Then in this system that Gino offers, we have a scorecard review. This is where we look at our numbers for the week and we just see how we're doing and we're tracking. We're not going to spend a lot of time today talking about that, but every organization has measurables. Some people are great at this. Some people are not so good at it. It's great to have a scorecard. Playing a game without not knowing how you're doing is no fun at all. So how are we doing this week is answered at this point in the meeting. Now, again, it's just a review of the numbers. Do they look good, or do we have some areas that we need to work on? The third point in a weekly level 10 meeting agenda is the rock review. We talked a minute ago about those quarterly rocks, those quarterly priorities. All we do is take a poll of the people in the room and say, are you on track with your rocks this quarter, or are you off track? It's just a little moment of touch base for accountability. If somebody's off track, we don't start to throw things at them and start to put them down. We just make a note and put that on our issues list. If the scorecard doesn't look good and there's something disturbing, we put that on our issues list. In other words, we capture our current organizational issues on a list. And one of the functions of this level 10 meeting is if our scorecard doesn't look good this week, or our rocks are getting off track and there's not a clear way to get back on track, that's an issue that we need to address. Fourth, headlines. This is the touch base about what happened this week, but it's very, very fast and very, very quick. Anything interesting about our customers or the people we serve, anything interesting in the employee world or the people, the team world that works here, good or bad things. If there's some bad things there, they might want to go on the issues list. If there's some good things, we have a moment of fun and celebration. Again, it's a round robin. It's very quick. If you're doing a level 10 meeting well, this first part that we just talked about, these first 5 items actually take about 15 minutes at the most. So you've got to have a great facilitation. You move through these. The to-do list is the last thing. At the end of the meeting, we talked about being accountable for action. Those actions that everybody committed to for the week, we just go around and ask everybody in the meeting, did you get your actions done or not done? It's just a yes or a no. If it's a no, we give you a mulligan for another week. If it's something that's been on there for 2 weeks, then we put it on the issues list. I hope you're catching the drift of this. This is a game changer. This one meeting every week is a game changer because this is where we've come to, solving issues. We're going to have this issues list. This is an ongoing list that we keep of all of our issues in the business. We might have 43 on there. We might have 3. We might have 10. We may have just added a couple from the weekly reports. But what we've got here is a list of problems that need solved. And the thing we're going to do together, and the facilitator is going to run this, they're going to get the top issues at the top. What are the top 3 most important things we need to address? Not the most urgent. What are the most important things on this list that we need to be working on? 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to use a system called the IDS to solve these problems as a team. Now, folks, here's what I want you to get from today. This might be a lot. This is a fire hose. I'm throwing a lot on you. You're not going to absorb all this. I get that. Here's what I want you to get from this. If you were having a weekly meeting regularly with your key people and you were solving your main problems every week, what would the organization look like? Wouldn't that be amazing? That's what a great meeting will do. People can't wait to get to that meeting because we're actually getting something done in that meeting. So we spend the bulk of this meeting solving issues, prioritize first, and then using this IDS process. I'm going to go through that in detail in a moment. And then there's a conclusion piece on the agenda. We recap the to-dos that came out of the problem solving. What messages do we need to pass on to some other reports? And then we rate the meeting 1 to 10. 10 being amazing, great meeting, on target. 1 is this is one of the worst meetings I've ever been to. We go around and everybody just gives their number. The goal here is to be an 8 or above every time. It's amazing when you get an open, honest communication about this. If it's below an 8, what would make it a 10? What would make it come up? If we have that kind of conversation, we keep this meeting healthy. We keep this meeting fun. We keep this meeting solving problems, and we love it. Now, I'd be glad to talk to any of you about that system and how to implement it. People sometimes implement it 100%. Sometimes they'd just like tools or pieces from it. This particular tool and piece, I think, is amazing. So again, any interest on that, please talk to me. So now let's talk about this problem solving. And you can take this as a standalone slide as well. How do you solve a problem in a meeting? How you got a problem to solve, you got a group of people that are going to work on it. What is the approach? Here we go. How to solve problems in a meeting. First, you got to identify the problem. That's the I. What is the real issue? Usually, folks, we're moving too fast, talking too much, and not listening to really hear and understand what the real issue is. And frankly, it's usually a people issue. It's usually a person or something that's going on with a person that needs to be addressed. But we have to slow down the conversation and really identify. We've identified that this is the top issue that we're going to deal with. We've prioritized. Now on this top issue, we need to identify what is the real problem. Have everybody in the room write down 1 sentence on what they think the true problem is. Until you get that feeling in the room, now we've got it identified. This is the real issue that needs to be solved here. We haven't done our work yet. But once you get that identified, you've got 80% of your work done just figuring out what the real problem is. Once you've figured that out, then we need to discuss it. How does that work? A couple of round robins on people's thoughts on how to solve this problem, ideas on how to approach this problem, but this is not a time we politic and rehash. We don't talk about things over and over and over again. This is where you as a facilitator and a leader have to keep it moving. This is where meetings become boring and tedious, when people just drone on over and over the same stuff, not getting anywhere. So again, once we've identified the problem, now we're going to collect the ideas, and we encourage people to even differ here and to fight here if necessary. Fight clean, fight joyful, fight supportive. We're not going to attack each other, but we are going to attack the problem. And if you don't agree with something, this is the time to speak up. But we're not going to rehash and politic. We're going to give everybody a couple of opportunities to give their thoughts and to summarize and clarify those, and then we're going to move on and solve the problem. And action solves problems. Action solves problems. What actions are going to be taken to solve this problem? Specifically, who is going to do what, when, to deal with this problem? And when we have an agreement on what the problem is, and we have an agreement on what the solution is, then it's just the assigning and the accountability and the follow-up to get it done. And this is what makes this meeting so powerful, is that we're solving issues. And we're not just solving any issue, we're solving the most important issue in the business or in the organization every week. Every week, we're taking the top 3 or 4. And then every quarter, we're cleaning that list out. So we start off every quarter with a clean list. And folks, this is just amazing. This is transformational. This is why I love good meetings, effective meetings. So how do you lead an effective meeting? This can apply to a level 10. This can apply to a one-to-one coaching session. These are just some principles on how to lead an effective meeting. First of all, you as the leader need to position the meeting. We've talked about the best practices that will help you do that. You need the purpose of the meeting. Why are we here? You need the process of the meeting, the agenda. This is what we're going to follow. You need the rules of the meeting. Are we allowed to fight today? Are we allowed to get loud? What language are we really allowed to use? We need to know what our culture is. And then we need to specifically know, here's, as the leader, and I want to hear this from everybody else, what do we want to walk out of in this meeting that we didn't have coming in? It's getting clear. You are positioning the minds of everybody in that meeting to be on the same page with the purpose, the process, the rules, and the desired outcome. Then, this is so important. That's why I put it in here as a separate step. Get permission of everybody that that's what we're going to do. In other words, does everybody agree that we've got the right purpose? You're willing to follow the agenda, follow the rules, and this is the outcome you want. Anybody got anything to add? If I got everybody's permission, are we together? That is so important to get everybody agreeing that that's, that they truly are agreeing that this is what we want to do. So you get everybody's permission to participate in that. Then you got to lead the process. You got to lead the agenda. And I have here, you got to be kind, but not nice. Nice people are selfish. That's an interesting statement, isn't it? N-I-C-E. Nothing inside me cares enough. Nothing inside cares enough. If I care about my meeting, I care about my people, I care about my mission, I care about what's going on, I'm not going to be nice. I'm going to be kind. Kind means I'm not going to attack individuals. But we are going to ruthlessly honestly talk about the problems and the issues. We're not going to pretty them up and candy them up. We're going to talk about them. That's what leadership is. I facilitate through good questions and through conversation, a true understanding and an ownership and an accountability and responsibility to solve problems. And if your meetings are not moving forward and you're not getting results, it's you. You need to learn how to do this. And you can learn how to do this. That's the point, is where do you ever learn how to do this? You need somebody to teach you and help you. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm offering this today. And then, what do we want to walk out with? Again, you as the leader need to make sure that we're walking out with documented agreements, including specific next steps and follow-up. In other words, establish who does what by when. If you're walking out of every meeting with a follow-up plan and specific things that are going to happen, and then the next time you get together, there's an accountability for that, you'd be amazed at what happens. I think people would love it. This isn't a big brother watching over you or beating people on the back. This is a joyful thing where we're getting something done and we're getting a sense of accomplishment and we're moving forward towards those annual goals and we're really doing something as a team. That's what this is about. I want to close out today with a key distinction. So I want to really slow things down here and end with this key distinction. I love distinctions because they're so clear. Once you get them, you just get it. You don't have to talk about it anymore. You just understand it. So this is a key understanding or distinction that will help you in doing great with your meetings. And here it is. Agreements versus expectations. I'm going to make a radical statement here that some of you may kick back on, but you've already agreed with me this morning. You weren't going to have an I know. You were just going to come in curious and fun and interested. So with that agreement, I'm going to make a statement here that you should expect nothing from anybody. Now, I don't know if that's a double negative. You should not expect anything from anyone. If you're expecting anything from your employees, from your customers, from your spouse, you got a problem. You have a problem to solve. I didn't say they were bad, expectations were bad, or that they're immoral. They're just ineffective. They dwell between your ears. They're subjective information. And all that can happen with an expectation is either a disappointment because somebody doesn't meet an expectation, or they just get over the line and they're trying to live to please you. Pleasing other people is what expectations are all about. That's parent-child, folks. That makes for a very weak organization, a dysfunctional organization, if you have an organization full of expectations. And by the way, as human beings, we all have expectations. We carry a lot of expectations. The work of leadership and communication and a good meeting is to turn those expectations into agreements. We need to get those expectations out on the table and discuss them. Expectations are a starting place, but they're not the best place to stay. In fact, they're very dysfunctional. Me going around trying to guess what you're expecting. So unshared expectations are the worst kind. If we share our expectations, then we can get agreement. When we agree, we're set free. When I expect, I disrespect. Let me say that again. When I expect, I disrespect. When I expect, it's big me, little you. I have my expectations, you have your expectations. There's a conflict, there's a pressure, there's an agitation involved. When we agree and we come together, we're set free. The distinction is amazing. Agreements are not expectations. They are opposite. Expectations are the problem. Agreements are the blessing. Agreements are what leaders do with expectations. We sit down and we create. It's a creative process. We create agreement which sets us free. We start off with a bunch of expectations, a basket load. We put them out, we analyze them, we talk about them, we laugh about them, we cry about them, and then we come together and we agree. And when that agreement occurs, then all we've got left to do is execution. We've got the agreement. This is what we're going to do, and in our integrity, we're going to fulfill that agreement and work toward that agreement, and we're all working together because we're agreed. I want you to hear it. Commitment is built on agreement. So many times people are trying to build commitment on expectations, and it causes problems. So I want you to really, if you're taking notes today, just jot those two words down and give them some thought. And think about what your organization or your situation or your meetings would be like if you got rid of all expectations and turned those into agreements. It's a huge concept, a huge distinction that is it's just transformational. With that said, I'm going to offer three things here in conclusion today. The first thing is, if you want a copy of these PowerPoint slides, a lot of content and information today, if you'll just email me, I'll send it to you free on request. Send you out a PDF of that. The second offer today, I have 3 articles in a PDF format that I'll send you if you just request them. How to create and conduct an effective accountability conversation. It summarizes some of the things we talked about today. The second article is that issue solving track by Gino Wickman's EOS. In other words, that IDS process. I've got an actual article that comes from the system that tells how to do that problem solving. It's a summary of that conversation. And then I have written a 12-page summary of that EOS traction book. If you're not really excited about going out and reading the book right now or buying it, you want to see a summary of it, I've written a summary of that system book. Again, all of those will be emailed to you. All you have to do is ask for them, and I'll be glad to email them out to you. And the third offer, you're saying, I really want some help, but I don't know if I'm quite ready to do a program, Dave, but I'd like to really consider that. I'm going to offer to anybody on this session today a 75-minute session via Zoom for $49. My clients are paying something around $350, depending on the package they buy for sessions like that. But this is a way I get to know people and work with them. So if you want to pay $49 and you want to schedule a 75-minute via Zoom to talk to me about any issue, any of the things we've talked about today, other things, I will show up not as a salesperson, but as a coach. I will show up just to help you with that problem for that hour and 15 minutes or so. So that is our presentation today. I promised we'd be done by 9:30, and we're done a little bit early. So have a great new year and have a great first first part of January, and hopefully we'll see you next month in February. And email us if you want to take advantage of the offers. And that's what we have for today. Hope it's been helpful. Thank you.